Good afternoon and welcome from the Nest Centre in London to our midweek briefing. My name is John Lough. I am the head of foreign policy. This week we're keeping the focus on developments to Russia's east. Our attention was caught by President Putin's participation in the annual Eastern Economic Forum that was held this year again in Vladivostok. The theme of the four-day event was the Far East Cooperation for Peace and Prosperity, and it supposedly attracted participants from 70 countries. For Putin, I believe it must have been a somewhat hard landing after the high-level discussions that he held at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting the previous week, followed by then the pomp and circumstance of the 80th anniversary celebrations in Beijing. The celebrations marking the end of World War II. He had all that fine company and surroundings, but on this occasion, the company was lower level, should we say. On his panel at the forum, he was flanked by the Prime Minister of Laos, the Prime Minister of Mongolia, and the Vice Chair of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of China. So it was not the highest level participation, if you like, particularly from China. In his speech to the forum, Putin pointed out that back in 2013, the development of the Russian Far East and Siberia had been designated as a national priority for the 21st century. So a high-level priority. He boasted that the state program for the development of the Far East was producing results. He said that in recent years, the Far East had even taken a leading position, in his words, across many key indicators and had outpaced Russia's overall economic growth rates. So quite where these statistics come from is not completely clear. But he added that over the past decade, the gross regional product of the Far East had increased more than 2.5 times. And he added that per capita investment in the Far East today is twice as high as the national average, which on the face of it sounds like a quite impressive statistic. But when you think that this presumably reflects the relative size of the population in Siberia and the Far East. So you've got, by the data I looked at earlier, you've got 28 million people. This is based on the 2021 census. In total, 28 million in the Far East and and Siberia. And in the Far Eastern Federal District itself, you've got just under 10 million. Putin talked about promising new industries in the region, including the development of shipbuilding, and the development of the transatlantic corridor. He also said that the depopulation trend in the Far East, which had been a real concern, particularly in the 1990s, had been reversed, and there was even an uptick in young people coming to live in the region. Again, quite where these statistics come from is not clear. Putin was briefly asked by the moderator during his session about the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline after the signing of some sort of agreement to develop the project the week before in China. And it appears to be some form of statement of intent by Gazprom and its counterpart CNPC, the Chinese National Oil and Gas Company. This pipeline is supposed to take gas all the way from the Yamal Peninsula via Mongolia to northeast China. But it really, I think, I'm going to leave it to Mikhail to explain to us what was in fact signed there. But it doesn't sound as though it was anything like as significant as Russian media, and indeed as Putin actually suggested during his response to that one question. But to discuss these issues, we're delighted to have back with us Mikhail Krutikhin, one of Russia's top energy experts. Up until the start of the big war in Ukraine, he ran a consultancy called Rus Energy. He was a co-founder of this energy, and he was telling me just before we started, sadly, it had to close as a result of the war. So. But nevertheless, Mikhail is still deeply versed in energy matters, so great to have him with us. Before we go to the Q&A, can I please remind people if they have questions or comments, you are kindly asked to put them in the chat and they will appear hopefully here in front of me and I will do my best to get to your point. Mikhail, let's kick off. And my first question to you is, what do you think the message was from the Eastern Economic Forum? Is there really a possibility to develop the Russian Far East and East Siberia as the authorities would like to suggest?
Well, I have visited several such fora in Krasnoyarsk and Irkutsk. I never went as far as Vladivostok and the Primorye region, but all those conferences and gatherings have one common feature. They never adopt any documents that would be obliging, that would identify some real projects in the area. It's just mostly talk and promises, and local journalists usually notice that. They ask what happened to the previous promises of this forum. And the answer is usually zero, because it's just a gathering. We have not witnessed even one signed documents at that Far Eastern Economic Forum, and no projects were identified. Yes, when the Russian president mentioned the development of the shipbuilding, for example, industry, I think this is not a very complete picture, because the shipbuilding, namely at the Zvezda shipbuilding wharves, it consists of welding together the sections of ships produced in South Korea, then delivered to the Russian territory, and then they say, okay, we are producing LNG carriers and tugs and platforms for oil discovery and so on. This is not so. This is just a very small affair, mostly run by Rosneft and Mr. Sechin as the CEO of Rosneft. And so far, we can see only two very large and very important projects in the Far East on the Pacific coast. It is Sakhalin-1 and Sakhalin-2. And both projects were initiated by a consortia of international companies. And yes, it is a very progressive idea. It used to be a progressive idea to build Russia's first LNG factory at Sakhalin-2. And Sakhalin-1 is also a very promoted project. It bet several world records, for example, for drilling horizontal wells from the shore to the gas fields and oil fields in open seas, and the length of the horizontal section was almost 20 or 21 kilometers. It's a record. Yes, we see very noticeable developments there. And another project was just a reloading hub for LNG, which the company called Novatek created on the Kamchatka Peninsula. I cannot name any other developments which happened in that region for the past maybe 10 or 15 years. It's still some sort of a vacuum in terms of real projects.
Yeah, Putin referred to some projects, I think, in the metallurgical sector, copper, for example, if I remember, but it's obviously not large, particularly large scale. So what is actually deterring investment in these regions? Is it simply a sort of lack of population, the shortage of infrastructure, the cost of doing business there, if you like?
Yes, it is the general situation in the environmental, in the investment environment in Russia, which is not very friendly to investors, both Russian investors and foreign investors. Then we see that the consumption in the area is very small. For example, I remember we were investigating the possibilities of building a chemical factory in the area, and we discovered that there was next to no demand for polyethylene, for example, polypropylene, and so on. And it was not possible, it was not commercially not viable to build such factories there. It is not the Far East, but it is close to the Far East in the Amur region. They are building a gas chemical complex, but basically it is one of the co-owners of that project is a Chinese company, and it is in fact a part of the network of Chinese gas chemical companies. It will produce some goods out of Russian gas for Chinese consumers only, because local consumers are pretty well satisfied with what they already get.
So, I mean, does this mean that the region is sort of doomed to, limited economic development and on that basis to depopulation? I mean, it's interesting
Yes,
that it is for the Russian authority, it is a priority project, as Putin said, for the 21st century. What does that mean in reality?
When I look at the area and see that along the Chinese border, in the areas that adjoin the Chinese border, there is 1.5 million people living there, and on the Chinese side of the border, 53 million people. And the development of those Chinese regions are in contrast with what we have on the Russian side of the border. It's when I'm looking at the social and economic level of development in those Russian regions, I fail to be optimistic about that.
So, I mean, that implies that at some point there will be more Chinese economic involvement in the area. I mean, even if they haven't invested there yet, but naturally there'll be surely some overspill if you've got that number of people on the side of the border.
Yes. The Chinese are investing only in such enterprises which are going to become a part of the Chinese pattern of the Chinese economy, but not for the sake of the developing some local Russian businesses. We are witnessing in almost every day. And for example, returning to the Power of Siberia 2 that was mentioned also, it is also the Chinese say, okay, we're not going to invest even 1 cent in that gas transportation infrastructure, just as they did not invest anything in the original Power of Siberia. Okay, they say, the Russians may build whatever they want in terms of gas transportation infrastructure, and then when it reaches the Chinese border, we will see if it is profitable for us. And if we manage to dictate the prices, then maybe we are going to take some of the gas that you are offering. So this is the arrangement. This is the attitude of the Chinese.
So, I mean, I want to dwell on this a little bit because it's such an important subject. As I was saying to you just before we started, I had some exposure to these issues when I worked at TNK-BP. The company had a substantial gas reserves in Eastern Siberia, as you know, at Kavykta. And there was TNK wanted, of course, to monetize those gas reserves, and there were plans, for a pipeline that would stretch from there, from East Siberia, right into South Korea, into the Republic of Korea. Of course, this could never happen without the consent of Gazprom. That consent never came. Gazprom then took the field. I mean, it did pay money for the field, but the project then at that point died. But what then happened, if we think back so this would have been after 2014, there was an accelerated effort by Gazprom, prompted by the Kremlin, of course, to develop this Chinese export route. And so this is when Power of Siberia presumably was born. I'm just trying to sort of reconstruct the story for myself. So Power of Siberia 1 came online, 2019, I think?
In December 2019.
And Russia negotiated the price under pressure from China. And we understand that price was actually well below what European consumers were paying. Am I correct?
Yes, what we see today, it is not only the data from the customs of China, it is data from the Russian budget, the federal budget. And the budget, for example, for the year 2027, the price of the Russian gas, which is to be developed to China via the Power of Siberia pipeline, is indicated as the $231 per 1,000 cubic meters. When Gazprom delivers gas to Turkey, it is 340. In Europe, we see the prices in around 400. So the price that the Chinese are paying for Russian gas, well, some people say it does not compensate the costs of production and transportation of that gas, to say nothing about the costs of building the gas transportation infrastructure. And it is a project which is not commercial. It is not me who is saying that. In the year 2019, a representative of the Energy Ministry of Russia, who was speaking to the lower house of the Russian parliament, said, you know, this is Power of Siberia is not a commercial project. They are losing money in that project. They are not gaining anything. And now when they speak about the new project, Power of Siberia 2, I suspect that the Chinese are behaving in a very traditional manner. I think it was the Financial Times which recently reported that the Chinese insist on the price of gas, which will be the same as the price of gas on the Russian territory for Russian consumers. And it is now in around $120 for 1,000 cubic meters. It will be 130 next year, I think. But still, it does not cover the costs of producing and delivering gas to China. And since the Russian gas projects targeting Asian consumers target only one consumer, China, it means that the Chinese are capable of dictating their terms and the price level at their will.
So the goal is to raise the gas exports to China to 100 billion cubic meters per annum. So that's what 2/3 of what Russia was exporting to Europe. And let's assume that European exports don't come on again anytime soon. I don't see any possibility of that right now. It would take a long, long time to rebuild the trust, I think, to take Russian gas again. And of course, then all the contracts have been signed in the meantime with other suppliers. So that's maybe a long-term effort. But what happens to Gazprom and to the Russian gas industry if it can't make money in this case? Because what you're saying is these projects are loss-making. Gazprom is going to have to invest in the construction of Power of Siberia 2. I don't see that any Chinese financing at this stage is available for this purpose, or the Chinese are showing interest. I mean, it's not a very pretty picture, is it?
Gazprom is already building the pipeline. Yes, I receive reports about Gazprom's actions, and the CEO of Gazprom, Alexei Miller, reported that they have already started to build the pipeline at the distance of 410 kilometers. It is just a section of the current pipeline that goes from the Yamal Peninsula to almost to the border of China in the Altai Mountains. And they are upgrading the capacity of that pipeline, and then they are going to build a spur from this north to south route to the Irkutsk region and link it to the current pipelines of Power of Siberia 1. It is one of the goals of the great project, because Power of Siberia 1 is not capable to deliver the contracted amount of gas every year for 30 years. It is just two gas fields, Kovikta in the Irkutsk region and Chayanda in Yakutia. And together, yes, they are producing 42 billion cubic meters of gas, which translates into 38 billion cubic meters of gas per year. because there are a lot of components in that gas. It is nitrogen, it is ethane and propane and whatever there is. So, and the specialists at the producing sites keep reporting to me the shape of the project. They say it is not possible to produce at this rate for 30 years. So to keep the project going and to carry out the obligations under the contract, Gazprom will have to deliver some more gas. And delivering that gas it is only possible if they build this Power of Siberia 2 pipeline from the Yamal Peninsula, because it's not possible to do it in time when the Chinese are going to ask Gazprom what is happening to the flow of gas that we must receive under the original contract.
So how is it that these massive fields like Kovykta and Chayanda, as you suggest, cannot sustain this level of output? I thought that they both had the capacity to do that.
Yes, for example, take Chayanda. Originally, the Russian geologists said, okay, it is going to produce 33 billion cubic meters of gas a year. Then when they came and the geologists take a closer look, they said, okay, it's 25. We cannot produce 33. And now when the people who are working at the site, at the wells, they say, you know, most of the largest, maybe in 2 years' time, it still will be about 18 or 19 billion cubic meters of gas only. And that gas contains only 86% of methane, which is to be exported. And so the wells are losing their productivity very quickly. It's a very sad picture. The same is happening with the Kovykta that you know quite a lot about that project. Now Gazprom has had to cancel, to delete the whole zones of that underground reservoir from their plants because they proved to be non-producing enough. It is the same thing which is happening with Chayanda is happening with Kovykta too. And yes, they will have to bring in new gas. Moreover, they are already linking Power of Siberia, the original one, to Khabarovsk. It is a link of 800 kilometers, and Gazprom is already building it, because Gazprom signed another contract in the Far East to deliver 10 billion cubic meters of gas to China starting in 2027. And the gas was to come from Sakhalin projects. And when we take a closer look at the condition of Sakhalin projects right now, we see that they can produce maybe 5 billion cubic meters a year. The 7 producing wells which are engaged in that project of Gazprom right now. And so they will have to bring some gas from Power of Siberia 1. And since Power of Siberia 1 is not going to last for 30 years, it will be the same gas from the Yamal Peninsula to the big pipeline to the south, then a link in the Irkutsk region to Power of Siberia 1, and then this link, which is being built right now to Khabarovsk, to the pipeline Sakhalin-Khabarovsk-Vladivostok.
Okay. So there are no gasification facilities in Khabarovsk. It's pipeline gas that will go on from there.
Yes, it's pipeline gas. And originally they planned the pipeline can carry Sakhalin-Khabarovsk-Vladivostok about 33 billion cubic meters of gas a year if they build all the compressor stations. According to the project, they must build 13 compressor stations. Only one station has been built. And Vladivostok receives 1.5 billion cubic meters of gas a year for its power generation there. Most of the power in the city of Vladivostok comes from coal. And this is why President Putin said that we have coal enough to last for 800 years, and it's still, well, This is true. This is a very rare occasion when the Russian president was telling the truth.
Fascinating. And I wanted to ask you, I remember one of the things that was related to the development of the Kovicta project when I was at TNK-BP was the need to gasify certain regions of East Siberia. Is this gasification, local gasification taking place or not?
No.
No.
It is not. Usually, when Gazprom builds huge pipelines, the areas around the route of those pipelines is not getting any gasification at all. For example, Gazprom built a big gas transportation corridor from the Yamal Peninsula to 2,200 kilometers to Torzhok, and it is 8 pipelines, parallel pipelines, and there was no gasification of any areas around that route. And I looked into the economic section of Power of Siberia 1 when my friends from Gazprom delivered it to me, and I saw how much gas Gazprom was estimating to be needed for local consumers along Power of Siberia 1. It was 3.4 billion cubic meters a year only. And Gazprom is not delivering anything out of that because all the gas goes first to the Amur gas processing plant and then across the border to China.
So, I mean, we can conclude from that the local economy can't benefit, apart from maybe from constructing these pipelines, but in terms of, cleaner fuel or the convenience of using gas, it's just not there, which is really very interesting in itself. Just tell me, in this context, why might China need this gas at all? Are they concerned that the Central Asian gas is going to run short in, the 30 to 40-year time frame?
We are just reading the new, development plans for China till the year 2060. And we see, yes, China is going to decrease the consumption of fossil fuels in that period. First, the peak of oil consumption has already passed, and they are decreasing oil consumption. Gas is still very much in the a target of development. It is a intermediary type of fuel right now, but still, I think it is going to peak in about 5 or 6 years from now. And the Chinese are satisfying their needs in gas. First, it is the Power of Siberia. Then it is the Central Asian gas, which comes via 3 pipelines from Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and they are building line number 4. Then it is a small pipeline from Myanmar. And then it is LNG. And the Chinese receive part of that LNG, not buying it from anyone. It comes from some foreign projects which are run by Chinese companies, or shareholders of those projects are Chinese companies. Just like, for example, they are importing gas from Yamal LNG in Russia and Arctic LNG 2 in Russia, because Chinese companies are participating in those projects, and some of the gas belongs to China. They just take their own gas and deliver it to China. That's it. And when we look at the Chinese figures and the forecasts of consumption, we do not see any Power of Siberia 2 at all. So it is for maybe for 15 years, Putin was trying to convince the Chinese at the highest possible level, of the level of Xi Jinping, to accept the proposals of Russia to deliver more gas to China. The Chinese were reluctant. There was a very interesting attitude of I think it was a deputy Prime Minister of China, who was visiting Russia some maybe 4 years ago, and they asked him, "What about the new pipeline? Maybe Altai pipeline will be built." And he said, "Okay, maybe we'll agree to see that gas coming from Russia via those pipelines on 3 conditions." Oh, and the Russian party was very interested. Well, first, you will allow Chinese companies to explore and develop gas reserves in Russia. The second condition, you will allow Chinese companies to build trunk lines, pipelines in Russia. And 3, you will allow Chinese companies to export their own share of production of gas. And all 3 conditions couldn't be met because the Gazprom is a monopoly, and it is not possible to allow the Chinese to come. For example, if the Chinese come and start showing how much money they spend on building 1 average kilometer of a pipeline, it will be, I think, maybe 10 times cheaper than Gazprom is building a pipeline there. It is not possible to allow such competition.
Sure. No, they would obviously destroy that particular business model, wouldn't they? But I mean, what you describe is really extraordinary because it seems that Gazprom simply can't make money, in the coming decades if it is, if you like, held hostage to the Chinese market, and we assume it doesn't come back to the European market.
Yes, we see that Gazprom is losing business. It's not a very profitable business. Usually, when you see the statistics about Gazprom, it is the statistics of the umbrella company. Gazprom includes not only gas production and sales, but also oil and some other businesses. And oil is prosperous still. Yes, the Gazprom Neft company is still profitable, but the net profit is declining because of low prices and the high value of the Russian currency. And but still, it provides some profit to Gazprom, and it's not a very good company, but it is trying to survive.
Well, it's a capable company. There's no doubt about that. We have just a comment here from Annette Bohr, who is an expert on Central Asia from Chatham House, who says that you may not be aware of this, Mikhail, that Berdimuhamedov in Turkmenistan just announced that China secured development rights to the 4th stage of a giant field there, cementing CNPC's role as Ashgabat's partner of choice in the energy sector. So there you have another indicator of.
Yes, it was. There was some competition between Gazprom and the Chinese companies, and Gazprom just couldn't deliver because the Chinese first they provided cash, they provided some very attractive loans to the Turkmen government. Then they agreed to build the pipelines from Turkmenistan to China. Gazprom was not prepared to do that. And they were prepared to produce their own gas there and to pay to buy some gas from Turkmenistan as well, in addition to their own share of production there. And Gazprom just couldn't compete.
Yeah. Well, that's very indicative of something. Mikhail, we have to stop there because we've run out of time. I want to thank you very much for sharing your insights. I've learned a lot from our conversation today. Thank you very much for joining us again. Thank you also to our audience for being with us. We look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.